We talk a lot about mental health provision on the programme and how the pandemic in particular has impacted on our well-being. Well, mental health campaigners here are now calling for action on what they claim is a postcode lottery for counselling access in GP practices across Northern Ireland. Almost 70% of GP surgeries offer the service to those who need it. But figures show that there's something of a disparity between the health trust areas and some assembly constituencies as well, around the level of provision, basically. Karen McGuigan's with us this morning. She founded the S.T.E.P.S mental health support group. It's based in Draperstown. Morning, Karen.
Morning.
And Sara Boyce, who's the mental health campaign organiser at the organisation, the Participation and the Practice of Rights. Morning, Sara.
Good morning.
These figures are really interesting. So 69% we think in terms of provision right across Northern Ireland. But the difference is, say, in the Northern Trust and the Southern Trust of the amount of counselling that happens in GP surgeries is really quite different. I think it's about 89% in the Northern Trust and about 51% in the Southern Trust. So why is that?
Well, can I start?
Yes, Sara, I did say,
sorry. Yeah, sorry. As you've outlined, that's the picture, Sarah. Today, the 123 GP campaigners, mental health campaigners, along with ourselves and PPR, are launching this interactive map, which will show counselling provision in GP practices right across the 5 trusts. And we're encouraging people to go on and have a look for themselves. You can go and find your own GP practice and check if they offer in-house counselling. And it's nlb.ie, so we'd encourage people to have a look. But when you go on the map and look, as you said, what jumps out is really the disparities or the stark contrast, both between trusts, across trusts, but also across assembly constituencies. Overall, we know that 69% of GP practices do provide in-house counselling, so that's a good start. Mm-hmm. But when you look at trusts, you can look at the Northern Trust and it's 89%, which is pretty high. But you go to the Southern Trust and it's as low as 52%, so just over half of all GP practices. It's even more stark when you look by assembly constituency across the 18 constituencies. We have East Tyrone at 100%, and really up in the northwest, the northern coast, you have constituencies that are up at 80 and 90%. But you go down, West Tyrone is 40%, South Down 45%, West Belfast 50%. So you can see just with those few constituencies, I mean, there's a huge gap between
Why do you think
trusts.
it's happening?
And I suppose, we think this is absolutely not fair. I mean, I think it would be obvious to anybody looking at those figures that this is not right or fair. So I suppose we've asked, that the campaigners have been asking the Health and Social Care Board that contracts this service to look at why it's happening. We know there's very good practice. We know that, 69% of GP practices do provide support for people when they're in distress. But we need to understand, and this is something we've been saying to the Health Board for years, that they need to proactively talk to the other practices and support them and to provide this service to their patients. Mm-hmm. And the reason, Sarah, just to say why it matters so much, we know, as you said, we're in an ongoing COVID crisis. What we can't afford to happen is for this to become an enduring mental health crisis, because this is not a new issue either. This is something that these campaigners, who have all walked this road, they all have their own experience of mental health problems, and families who've been bereaved by suicide, so they know better than anybody what is needed. So this was a problem before COVID. We know now that GPs are on the front line. They absolutely need to be equipped to support patients. There are increased levels of anxiety and stress and depression. But what we absolutely can't happen is for this to be turned into where people can only go to their GP and access medication. We have a huge problem here in the society with medication. It has its place, but what we need to see now is we need the Minister to act to make sure that this does not become an enduring mental health crisis.
Well, I mean, it's 70%, almost 70% take-up, as you've said, is certainly a very positive start. And if you look at what the HSCB has said about this, they've said that they've actually invested an increase of 1.66 million since 2017. In total, this year, it's been 2.279 million. So they have put plenty of money into it. But what they've said is, Sarah, that GPs have the choice to provide this service for their patients. And they've encouraged GPs practices to contract for services where uptake is lower than in other areas. But ultimately, the decision is with the GPs, they seem to be saying.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard the Health and Social Care Board saying that as well, Sarah. But you know, that figure of just over 1.27 million, that is still a drop in the ocean. While we have 69% of practices that can offer in-house counselling, that's sort of only the starting point, getting it over the line. And I know that is Karen's experience on the ground in a local community. There are still big issues with waiting times. It's something that the board doesn't even monitor. So the board doesn't really know. They're putting money in, but they don't know how long people are sitting on waiting lists. People are only offered 6 sessions. What we would be saying is that, you know, there's very good practice. We have spoken to a lot of GPs who absolutely see the value of this. This is an essential service. And the board needs to, as of tomorrow, really start proactively to engage with the other GP practices. We know that the board have started a review of this service. We asked to meet with them. Campaigners wanted to meet with them before Christmas because they have all the evidence. They also have the solutions, but we understand that review has been parked. So I think the focus for us is there is a 10-year mental health strategy out for consultation. That has to be the opportunity to fix this. This year, we need to ensure that every GP practice is equipped and can provide counselling support alongside or instead of medication, because ultimately this is a win-win. This is a win-win.
I need to bring Karen in at this point because we're a little bit short of time, Sarah. My apologies. What about GP practices in your area, Karen? Do they offer this counselling service? You're in Draperstown.
Yes, we're extremely lucky in the Northern Trust. We fall into the Northern Trust. Right. But I suppose why we added our voice to this is because we are seeing the benefit on the ground. And even with our local GPs, so like you're talking, Draperstown, Maharal, Maherfelt, they all have an in-house counsellor. And even with that, in 2016, we set up S.T.E.P.S counselling to take our GPs waiting list. And even with that, we have seen 392 people over the 4-year period from December 2016 to December 2020.
So there's huge demand.
Huge demand. And this is only a small aspect of our mental health campaign. We just want everybody to get access to service because we see the benefit. Like in a rural community, we have seen people from 38 different towns and the GP can only do so much. But if you don't even have that, if that's not even your starting point, like we're plugging a gap and we have those services available. I don't know what's been available now in the Southern Trust for it. And I would love GPs to come out and be more proactive about the benefits that they're seeing in their practice. Because we talk to our GPs all the time and they're saying the benefit to them because we went, as I say, initially to take their waiting list because their waiting list was 1 to 2 years. They just could not cope with the amount of people. And even though we have set up our S.T.E.P.S counselling, the demand is massive. And it's very much a preventative measure. Yes. Because Desmond Tutu said, we have to stop pulling people out of the river. We have to go upstream and see why they're falling in. And counselling is a preventative. If we can get people before they get to crisis, then we're solving a lot of problems.
Yes, indeed, and you're taking pressure off other mental health services further down the river, as it were, or indeed people that end up being frontline mental health workers like the police or just people out on the streets dealing with people. Karen, can I ask you why you think it is that, for example, let's look at West Tyrone. 40% of GP surgeries are doing the counselling there compared to 100% of GP surgeries in East Antrim. Do you understand what the disparity is? Is it to do with the GPs not taking this up? Is it a lack of counsellors? Is it the HSCB's problem? What is it?
It's probably a combination. GPs could, you see, I can't speak for them, I'm not a mind reader, but I'm just guessing they could probably think it's a lot of work. And this is where I think other GPs could come in and be given best practice. So they could be talking it up to say, look, this will be the benefit. And they could be the model for it to go, look, this is how easy it is, this is what you do, and talk people through the step-by-step. Because I know the managers within GPs meet. So then if that's happening in the Northern Trust, that practice can be put forward. And if they're selling the benefit for it for GPs, I think there could be a far greater uptake of it.
It's really interesting to speak to both of you, and we are going to speak to the interim mental health advisor, or champion, I should say, for the Northern Ireland Executive, Siobhan O'Neill, later on. But thank you very much for alerting us all to this. That's Karen McGuigan, who founded the S.T.E.P.S mental health support group based in Draperstown, and to Sara Boyce. Thank you very much, Sara, mental health campaign organiser at the organisation The Participation and Practice of Rights, who have put these figures together. There is an interactive map going up a little bit later on, which we can give you the address to, which will show which GPs in your area are doing this, or which areas have GP services.